both men to the hospital, where one died. One woman who lives nearby tells Fox 5 the violence around the city has got to end.
I think it's very sad, and I think people need to do better, especially with everything else here going on in Atlanta. I feel like people need to get it together and stop shooting right away. That's not the way to do it.
Person now being treated. Police have not made an arrest in this case. Continuing our coverage tonight, a judge denying there. In a written statement, the district says the safety and well-being of our students remain a top priority, and all students involved in this fight have now been charged. A Georgia teen pleading guilty to hearing this morning. She was sentenced to serve life in prison, but she does have the possibility of parole. Her boyfriend now expected to stand trial later this year.
New details.
Exactly what led up to the shooting from him. Obviously, it's a very tense situation. He did tell us, though, that his wife was shot in the back and there were children inside the car when this happened. As far as where or when this happened or even what led up to this, all of that's still being investigated. We have reached out to Atlanta police. You can see there are a couple Atlanta police officers here on scene that are checking this out and continuing the investigation. And as soon as we have more information for you, we'll be sure to pass it along on air and online. That's the latest here in Southwest
Heritage High School during this school year. The safety of our students and staff is always our top priority. Have these conversations with their children.
Columbia Drive and Casa Linda Drive in DeKalb County. Davenport says the driver ran a red light and hit his brother, who was in a crosswalk. He died at the scene, and police have not found the driver.
When I got here, I see the crime scene tape, and I approached to go up under the crime scene tape. Police officer told me I could not access that area. And I said, well, you don't understand. There's my brother's shoe. My brother's shoe is right at that curbstone.
Davenport says he and his brother were about a year apart in age and inseparable. He was an Army veteran and a loving father. On Monday, loved ones gathered to celebrate what would have been the day after his 65th birthday.
Lord, thank you for bringing us together today, Father God, to honor one of your kings, one of your angels.
Since that December evening, Davenport has worked on behalf of his brother. He pushed the city of Atlanta and DeKalb County to pass proclamations declaring December 13th Hit and Run Pedestrian Victims Awareness Day. He's also launched a foundation called the Hit and Run Help Foundation to make sure victims are not forgotten and to help provide money to their families.
It's just so important that, these people just understand that by them having a total disregard for human life, there is somebody still who cares for these people.
Unfortunately,
shot in the back. Green is charged with aggravated assault and cruelty to children.
A 19-year-old charged in the deadly shooting of 14-year-old Kyra Scott will stay in jail. A Douglas County judge denied bond for Yusuf MacArthur. The judge noted that MacArthur was out on bond for a separate incident when police say he committed a robbery that ended in Kyra's death. Deputies say the victim's 13-year-old brother Wilson Scott was making ghost guns out of the family home on Vicky Lane. Investigators say Scott fired shots during the robbery, one of which killed his sister. He is also in jail on a felony murder charge. A Gwinnett County judge
released on his or her condition. We expect the UN Security Council to
the shooting. The surviving student was in critical condition at a local hospital. In Pennsylvania,
cities included Seattle, Omaha, Phoenix, Detroit, Baltimore, Memphis, Chicago, Denver, Philadelphia, Los Angeles, and Washington, D.C. The 22 cities were selected because their police departments provided weekly updates on crime from January 2018 through December 2021. Of the cities that CCJ studied, 16 cities reported a rise in homicides just last year in the second quarter compared to the same time in 2020. Though not all bad news. 6 cities, including Seattle and Omaha, saw a decrease in homicides. But as for other forms of violent crime, the study reported an 8% increase in gun assaults, 4% rise in aggravated assaults, and a 1% surge in robbery rates that dropped in 2020. Domestic violence also increased to 4% since 2020 in 11 cities, contributing to the stay-at-home orders when the pandemic shut the world down, leaving everyone stuck at home together.
The United States and Russia squared off Monday.
The body of Amari Hall was discovered in a garbage bag on the side of the road back in November. Prosecutors say her mother and her mother's partner were responsible. Our size Portia Bruner is at the live. Portia.
Yeah, the details outlined during the bond hearing depict a history of abuse and a horrible death for little Amari. Prosecutors say the evidence proves Celeste Owens and Brittany Hall played a role in the 8-year-old's murder. Gwinnett County prosecutors say police sought murder warrants against 27-year-old Brittany Hall and her 29-year-old partner, Celeste Owens, last November after the coroner determined Amari Hall's cause of death was battered child syndrome.
They saw various scars, various bruises in various stages of healing, and circular burn marks, which seemed to them to be cigarette-type burn marks.
Gwinnett police found the 8-year-old's body in a garbage bag in the woods off Mountain Industrial Boulevard in DeKalb County, at just a few miles away from the Gwinnett Motel, where Brittany reported her daughter missing November 19th.
Officers proceeded to open every single door of the hometown suites in an effort to locate Amari. At that time, they utilized canine units.
But prosecutors say it was a conversation with Amari's younger brothers that revealed what really happened.
Officers then briefly spoke with 6-year-old Zaire, who indicated to them that Amari had gone to the Bad Kids Hospital. They tried to inquire a little bit further about what that meant, and ultimately the statements that were made indicated that she died last morning when my mommy went to get weed.
The prosecutor told the judge videos from nanny cameras inside the motel room where the family stayed revealed even more evidence of violent abuse.
They saw both the defendants beating both Jakari, Zaire, as well as Amari. Different times, different dates.
You are certainly a risk to intimidate witnesses and danger to the remaining children that are alive, and a risk of flight with no stable residence and no familial support, from what it sounds like.
Morning during the overnight hours. I haven't gotten any real information from Spellman about how they are handling this, if they're taking any special precautions as a result of the threat. We do know that Atlanta police is assisting campus police in dealing with the investigation. And as we mentioned, Spellman is just one of a dozen or so schools. Another school in Georgia also received a bomb threat this morning. That would be Fort Valley State University. They've actually suspended classes all day long. In addition to them, Morgan State University, Edward Waters University, Kentucky State, and Howard University, and Xavier University of Louisiana all had bomb threats called in just today. You might recall that yesterday it was another 6 or so HBCUs across the country received these type of threats, including Albany State in South Georgia. Now, we do know that the ATF and Explosions Bureau, as well as the FBI, are working this investigation. So far, luckily, none of these threats have turned out to be legitimate. Let's hope that it stays that way. But we're going to stay on top of this story here just off the time.
Megan Fitzgerald now on both sides of the story.
Across the country, violent crime is on the rise, and police chiefs believe one major policy change is at least partly behind the surge. From LA,
Zero bail poses challenges
to Chicago.
Keeping violent offenders in jail longer will reduce violent crime.
To upstate New York. How do you describe the state of where we are right now?
I think there certainly is fear.
The state of New York did away with cash bail for low-level offenders in 2019. That means those charged with some crimes aren't held in jail, but instead released until they stand trial.
I've seen them myself where certain individuals, in my opinion, should not be released into our community. They make our community less safe.
Other states like California, Illinois, Kentucky, and New Mexico have made similar changes. And shortly after reform was enacted in New Jersey in 2017, June Rogers lost her 26-year-old son, Christian. The father of 2 was allegedly gunned down by a convicted felon who was arrested days before on a weapons charge and released. You're angry over this bail reform in New Jersey.
Of course I am. You can't. I'm hurt, angry, all of that. I lost my child, and I don't believe this would have happened had it not been for bail reform.
The argument made for bail reform is that oftentimes low-level offenders can't afford bond and can sit in jail for months. Like Lavette Mays, she never had a criminal record until an altercation with her mother-in-law landed her behind bars.
My bond was set at $250,000. That was $25,000 to walk, and I couldn't afford to pay that.
Mays sat in jail for 14 months. She lost her business and says her life crumbled as a result.
I had contracts. I lost all those contracts. I even lost where I was living. It affected my family. My kids was really impacted by it. It made it even worse.
She now advocates for bail reform. What do you say to people who are against bail reform, who say that it's increasing crime?
That claim really can't be substantiated.
Kellen Funk studies bail reform at Columbia University. He says there aren't enough studies yet to get a clear answer, but also that crime is rising everywhere, including where there has been no bail reform.
It would be very strange to conclude that modest reform efforts in one or two jurisdictions is somehow responsible for a rise in crime.
But for June Rogers, who lost her son, it's hard to accept that bail reform didn't play a role in his death.
No one is taking responsibility for this. I have to go down to the graveyard to visit my son, which is terrible.
Megan Fitzgerald, NBC News.
By lethal electrified fences. They intend to submit permanent proposed regulations within weeks that would make the transfers mandatory and, quote, allow for the repurposing of all death row housing units.
Reproductive biology and genetics at birth. You have biological males competing against biological females in female sports, and a biological female is at a huge disadvantage in that, and that's why we separated the sports to begin with.
It's interesting because when I see my daughter out on the field with all the other girls, she's one of the smallest kids on the team.
Jen Slipikoff has a 14-year-old transgender daughter who plays girls lacrosse at a private school. She says it's never been an issue with her friends or teammates or on the field.
This idea that, they're taking the place of somebody else, or, they have an unfair advantage. Trans kids are already dealt a difficult hand. I don't understand this idea that we should be making it harder for them.
Slipikoff characterizes the bill as a waste of time and effort, and yet she says she expects to be down here at the Capitol to lobby against this bill, which has strong Republican support. At the Capitol, Doug
trying to disguise the source of the threats, which appear to have a racist motivation. FBI officials say the juveniles live all over the country, and so far no explosive devices have been found on any of the campuses.
City of Atlanta removing at least one barrier.
For students who want to become police officers in Atlanta, a place for them to live while they learn. Now, we're going to hear from Andre Dickens, the mayor, who's been working on this project for years. That's just ahead.
And join us tonight for a candid conversation about
reverses that order. Reinke says supply chain issues may not fully resolve until 2023. New at noon, data from the
Now, Rogan has publicly pushed back against those claims and says his podcast simply allows him to talk to people who have differing opinions.
I'm interested in telling the truth. I'm interested in finding out what the truth is. I'm not interested in only talking to people that have one perspective.
In 2020, Spotify reportedly paid more than $100 million for the exclusive rights to the podcast. But following the public outcry, the company's stock has dropped 26% and hit a 52-week low last week.
Meanwhile, Prince Harry and Meghan...
The pandemic over if the coronavirus becomes mild like the flu.
We're just going to eventually have to say, well, this is it's the flu and the COVID season. It's just the flu season.
And that sets.
You don't have any medical problems and you had a significant Omicron infection, you could wait 2 to 3 months and possibly see if there's a specific booster down the line. But the answer is yes, you should definitely get boosted because that will provide much more durable immunity. As far as how long you should wait, in summary, it just depends on your individual situation, but definitely you should be boosted after an infection.
So, Dr. Winter, if you receive the regular booster now, does that mean that you won't be eligible for the Omicron-specific booster in the future, or do we know yet how that'll work?
Yeah, we don't know, but Pfizer is studying it. There's actually an arm of this clinical trial looking at the booster, another booster on top of those who are already been boosted. Now, the issue is, though, it's only been 4 months since these individuals have been boosted, so we don't know whether or not the protection of the current boosters is going to be durable. So we'll just have to wait and see. However, if our
a little bit different. Right here in Georgia, Chinese artist Hong Ren has come up with a new and creative way to mark the occasion, and her latest piece is the perfect subject for Skyfox Drone. Chinese artist Hong Ren has been looking for a new creative outlet. In the days leading up to Chinese New Year, she longed to be with friends and family in China who she hasn't seen since 2019. And due to current travel restrictions, that's probably not going to change anytime soon. So she came up with a new plan.
2022 is the year of the tiger. So I think maybe I can write something on the front yard. So I think just a few minutes, I told my husband, can I do that? He will always say yes.
She brought me a piece of paper with a symbol on it and said, can I put this in the front yard? And I went, sure. Now, what I thought the question was, can I put this sign in the front yard? And what she meant as an artist was, I would like to make this symbol in our front yard. I then realized, okay, I'm in for an adventure.
A big adventure. Hong Ren traded in her pencils and paintbrush for a lawnmower, a tractor, and a much larger canvas.
The height is 180 feet. Wide is 100 feet.
We launched Skyfox Drone so you can truly appreciate the size and scale of this incredible piece of landscape art. A Chinese symbol for tiger that Hong Ren says took 2.5 days to complete. And she only had one shot.
That's not like painting on the paper. If wrong, we can use the eraser to clean them and then to fix them. But if they cut the grass not grown for immediately. So I'm very worried. Don't touch it. I'm going to do that.
Husband John Downs was inspired watching his wife work so hard on this project.
It's just such a different feeling when you see a person doing what they love to do when it's something like art, because she was completely involved in that process as if the whole front yard was a canvas.
And as for Hong Ren, she says she's just getting started.
I always think how to keep going to continue my art.